Hey everybody, it's your old pal Chuck, and here's a review that's 40 years in the making. Celebrating the 40th anniversary of G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, the toy line and the comic, we have our first official, non-convention exclusive, actual transforming G.I. Joe Transformers crossover. And realistically, this is closer now to over 50 years, pushing 60 years in the making. Allow me to explain. In the beginning, there was G.I. Joe, America's Modern Fighting Man, the 12-inch action figure. That was licensed out across the world. In Japan, it was originally called Action Joe, or Action Man Joe. Didn't sell well, so Takara, who was Hasbro's partner at the time, adjusted the tooling and became the Henshin Cyborg, which was a million-selling line. Incidentally, for those of you who are Power Ranger fans, if you ever want to see Takara making Red Rangers, they did that in the Henshin Cyborg line as well as Kamen Rider. Well, somebody at Takara got the idea, why don't we take the 12-inch figure, make it smaller, and then we can make the money selling accessories and vehicles, playsets, what have you. So they did that. That was around the mid-70s, and Microman was born. And Microman became an even more billion selling line. And as we also all know, that was one of the lines that was a feeder for Transformers. Microman begat Diaclone, and Diaclone begat Car Robots and Microchange. There you go. Also, I believe that the Microman figure was an early inspiration for the articulation part to the 3 3/4-inch G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero figures. Yes, they were the Hasbro's answer to Star Wars, but Microman had the knees and elbows and the overall shape of what A Real American Hero figures became. And if you go forward, when they rebooted Microman, those were some of the first 3 3/4-inch figures to have the ab crunch that we saw on the 25th anniversary and forward G.I. Joe figures. So this is a long time coming. And let me just also say, if you're looking for a Megatron tank that's going to be up to the same level as, say, Siege or Earthrise, that's not here. But if you're a G.I. Joe fan looking for a HISS tank to go with your retro collection, this is actually pretty good. I mean, this is a HISS tank. This has all the functions and bells and whistles that I remember a HISS tank having. So there's that. We also have the inclusion of the Baroness retro figure. These are not the newer style figures that have diaphragm joints and enhanced articulation. These are actually figures based on the original A Real American Hero Joes, so they're using O-rings. This is new sculpt, new tooling, based on the original looks. Tolerances have been improved in the hands, but again, it's still O-rings. O-rings will dry out and break over time. So it's not a question of if, but when these figures will break. So we're going to pause right now. We're going to come back. We're going to start off taking a look at the Baroness. All right. So the Baroness does come on the retro throwback style G.I. Joe card. Her biography, though, is unfortunately truncated due to it needing to be printed in multiple languages to save on printing costs. And I have to say, while I never had a vintage Baroness figure, this looks very close to what I've seen in photos. The accessories, the character comes with, well, the figure comes with, I guess you can say 3. The stand, the classic sniper rifle, and the backpack. Unfortunately, there's nowhere on the HISS tank to store the weapons or the backpack, so you'll have to put them aside when putting the figure onto the tank. Surprisingly, the figure stands well on the stand. With the more modern 3 3/4-inch Joes, I've had issues with them trying to stand on stands. It might have to do with the fact that they usually had those raised insignias on them. For those of you not familiar with the articulation, the head is a ball joint, but unfortunately it is very limited by this hair. This is a soft rubbery hair, so you can get some articulation, but not much. They could have sculpted it like they did on the original figures, where the hair was far enough from the neck that it could pose, but I think they were going for more like a balance between the toy and the animation comic aesthetic. Universal shoulder joints, bicep swivel. These are, yes, again, these are based on the version 1.2 G.I. Joes. If you remember, after the initial 82 run, they did go back and add the swivel arm. The hands, Hasbro has been very proud to say that the design has been enhanced and changed, that the thumbs won't break off from holding the weapons. And this is a very, very nice reproduction of the rifle. I think Baroness was, at times, a sniper. She was really the third in command of Cobra, and I want to say she was somewhat involved in, like, propaganda and communications. So there was that. Moving on, all the waist articulation, bending, crunching, that's from the O-ring. So just be careful with that. And then moving down the leg, you have the hip. That is also, again, controlled by the O-ring. That O-ring snaps. The torso will separate from the waist, and depending, it might even pop out from the crotch. So you just might end up with, like, a bunch of pieces. And there is a 90-degree bend. There is no wrist articulation. There is no ankle articulation. Again, the vintage style Joe. And really dig the backpack. I do believe that was, like, the style of backpack she had. Nice little Cobra logo on it. So it's a fun figure, and I have to say, kind of thinking I might want a couple more of these retro figures, but then again, it's a Hasbro Pulse exclusive, and they go for a ton of money. So what we're going to do now is pause, and then come back, and we're going to discuss more about how Baroness interacts with the Hiss Tank. Okay. Bringing the Hiss Tank back in, let me just point out that all the detailing you're seeing here, this, as far as I remember, is accurate to the original Hiss Tank. Now, this right here, 363, I want to say that might be the original release date for the original 12-inch shows. March 63. I didn't think they were that old, but I might be right. You have the warnings and stickers here. These are all pre-printed on, by the way. On the original one, these would all be stickers. You have a Cobra logo right there. Paint on for the lights. So, all this great stuff. And let me just also say, if you go ahead and remove Megatron's fusion cannon, that is a Hiss Tank. I mean, that's what it looks like. There's no Cobra, Decepticon logo, nothing. This is... Apparently, the G.I. Joe team designed these figures, and clearly the vehicle mode took precedence. And I kind of appreciate that. It would have been nice if it was a team effort. Let Takara have a little... I think it would have been kind of cyclical to have Takara conferenced in on this, seeing as how, in a way, they kind of had a hand in all of this, but... So the first thing you can do with the Baroness is put her in the turret like so. Now I have the arms up, just so it can look like she's manning the turret. I mean, the instructions show you with just the arms down. Here, move the backpack. And it'll just drop in like that. But I think you would want a little more of an action feel. Now, the figure can also sit in the canopy. So, and the guns come separate. The guns and the backpack come separate in the packaging. We'll get into that when we get into robot mode, because they show you how to attach the two guns here and the fusion cannon. They do not show you how to attach the main turret. Baroness can sit in the tank, just like so. I mean, it's a little unfortunate that there's a, that's the controls there, and she kind of can't reach it. But then again, there might be some hand controls or something. But close up the canopy. Oh, it goes. I think it has to go down a little more. Did I not have it far forward enough? There we go. And she can drive the HISS tank, which I think was like one of her specialties, at least in the comics. And then finally, and by the way, when I say the Baroness, any of the retro figures can do this. You can have them standing on the back. So if you have a couple like that Trooper Officer set, if you have that Duke Cobra Commander set, you can have some fun. You can have the Trooper and Officer on the back, Cobra Commander up here, Baroness driving. I'm going to assume at some point then the retro collection will have a standard HISS tank released, so we'll have the HISS tank driver. And then finally, one thing I want to point out is to show you the accuracy of this. This does even have the tow hook built in, so you can tow those some of the, like, I think there was like a mobile cannon or missile rack that the HISS was like meant to tow. I know there was something it could tow, that it was like a whole part of it, but that's about it for the HISS tank. And like I said, this is really cool. So what we'll do now is we will pause and we will come back to go into the transformation. Okay, as you can see, I've had to really bring the camera back because it's not that Megatron gets big, it's that there's a lot like just splayed out. I do want to mention how everything comes together very nicely in vehicle mode, in the tank mode. The gapping, the paneling you see, those are the actual where the panel breaks are on the tank. So there was some thought to this. And even going into robot mode, when I thought there were going to be problems, it was like the instructions really weren't that clear, but things move out of the way clearly and easily to get stuff where it needs to go. So it's not that bad. Now, the instructions tell you to start the transformation without the guns attached. You can do it with the guns attached. But the first thing you need to do is remove this back panel. And that, of course, will reveal Megatron's head and chest. This will become a shield in robot mode. And yes, if you lose this, not only do you lose the platform, but you have this whole vehicle open. I'm not going to say Megatron's a parts former or a shell former, but there is some that is that one panel that needs to be used to finish off the transformation and cover everything up. So once you remove that panel, fold down the trailer hitch and it'll peg into place. So yes, that will be sticking out on Megatron. The next thing you want to do is open up the canopy if you haven't already, and then proceed to detach this back section from everything. You know, just bring it up. Don't. And let me just tell you, getting that into, getting this pegged into the treads is the hardest part of the transformation going into vehicle mode. It is very finicky. So you want to also then at that point fold up the rest of the canopy. Separate what was the back part of the treads. They do peg into the sides here of Megatron's chest, but I guess through the nature of just moving them, you'll unpeg them. And next thing what you want to do is fold down and out what will be the feet in robot mode. This will allow you to come in and pull up the arms, but also for your own sanity at this point, the canopy collapses in on a hinge there. That's for robot mode. That'll just give you a little more space to work with. You don't have to bump into things. Bring the arms up, straighten them out. You might think going into vehicle mode you want to bend them all the way. They only really need to bend slightly, and if you don't have them lined up properly, this part will not sit flush. Go ahead, separate the canopy, separate the arms. They connect obviously at the canopy, but they also connect at this panel, and then just telescope everything out. Yeah, it does get a little messy, unfortunately, but, you know, we're getting there. I would say just for right now, leave everything where it is. There's no real shortcut or anything. Now, this is a part that the instructions aren't clear on. When going into tank mode, you want to bend at the turret section to have this whole part come down. So when going into robot mode, you want to bring that back up, just like so. And what it'll basically look like is Megatron is kneeling. And that's the other part, is they don't tell you is that you have to bend the hips forward a little. So what you want to do is now... Oops, that came off. But you know what? That's actually kind of good, because this comes separate in the box. So I will show you how to put that on. That actually works out pretty well. But that shouldn't have come off like that. So you want to straighten the knee out and then bring the hip down. Straighten the knee out. There is a tab where that lower part of the leg will tab into the crotch. Straighten that out. The hips are on ratchets. And before you stand anything up, make sure to flip out the heel pieces. I did not know there were heels. I actually was standing Megatron quite fine without them. But if you got them, use them. So, yeah. We're starting to get things together. So that's actually like the lower section is done. We're going to move up to the upper section. So let me just do this. There you go. I just brought the camera up slightly, so you didn't need to see the herky-jerkiness. And I guess now is we can start bringing these torso bits down. And again, this is the one part where you might have a little problem crashing. Rotate these treads around so you have these what look like missile launchers facing out, and then bring this down to the side, just like that. These will be the side skirts. And when it comes packaged, they're actually rotated up like this, but they should be facing forward. Next, what you want to do is bring up this side panel here, and that will help start to position the arms. You're not going to peg the arms in yet because you need the space to collapse Megatron's torso. And first you want to do that, collapse the torso in, just like so. Stuff will snap into place. And then those tabs on Megatron's torso that the treads were pegged into, these will now peg into these these arm units here. And they kind of hold. You might notice they might move a little when you're posing the arms. Go ahead, bring the arms down, rotate at the elbow so the hands face forward. Bring these shoulder panels down, and this is actually kind of a cool step. This is basically, I thought it's like they screwed this up. There was no how do you do this without breaking it, but they thought about it. This side panel comes forward all the way to allow you to flip up this panel, which comes up like that, and this all folds back. So bring it forward, fold it up, fold it in. And here's basically the base Megatron that we end up with when you first take the figure out of the box. And it is nice packaging, by the way. Let me just, oh boy, there's like a lot, not an easy way to get him all in the shot. So like I mentioned, the canopy comes separate. It actually comes with that part folded up, just like so, and it's without the guns attached, and it's slid into the box. So make sure, of course, that this section is down, and you'll see there are two posts here that are going to slide in and peg in to the tracks here. And I'm actually kind of glad this came off because for storage, this will make it easy. So there's really no easy way to do it. Just snap it in. And there are 2 tabs. Where are they? There are 2 tabs right there on that armpit joint that will snap in and hold the canopy. Do I even have this in right? Do I have this in right? That will hold the canopy in place. And you might just want to check both sides, make sure it's posted in. So there's that. And then finally, rotate the turret around so it's facing forward behind Megatron's head. And oh boy, this is a big boy, big boy, biggest boy, the big boy. And without further ado, there is Megatron in its robot mode. Let me bring. There's really like, oh boy, oh yeah, no, I can't like zoom out anymore. This is like, whew. He gets big. Let me. Now, of course, this is a backpack, but again, this is mostly a hollow piece. And of course, it's hollow because a figure has to fit in here. And if it was any more solid than it is, it'd be very heavy. So, there's Megatron. Let me see if I can now bring it down. Alright, you're not going to be able to see his feet, but to finish off the figure, they kind of had to make the fusion cannon a little stubby. That's because it's not going to peg into the forearm, but it's going to peg into the back of the hand. And then same thing with the shield. And I have not discovered a place to store it on the vehicle mode. If you have this and you found something, tell me. But there you go. And there he is. Oh, he does not look happy. Few things to know. Yes, the figure is hollow, but you don't really see under the arms here. Yes, you do have the open panels, and even on the inside there. But again, it has to be somewhat hollow to support the weight of what this figure does. If you look at the legs, you got ratchet joints. Yeah, right up here at the hip, it's hollow, but this whole section down here is kind of you have a kind of solid, and yeah, it's open up there, but again, that's because everything collapses in and you have those nice heel pieces. By the way, these are on ball joints, so they can move out of the way when you need them to do some posing. Can you get a lot of dynamic poses out of this? Not really, but again, it's Megatron. I mean, he wasn't like a dynamic poser. That was Starscream's job. I made a joke. But this is really cool. And I know there were some early in-hand reviews. I don't know, honestly, if those were leaked samples or what have you. I didn't watch them. And there was like a lot of negativity because of the hollowness. But it's hollow because it has to support the weight of what it's doing. And it does that. I mean, I'm not worried about this falling over. And of course, now one thing I am disappointed about is I thought the turret could fold flush against the back. Because right there you see that opening, and I thought this would just swing down where the figure, the gunner's position is, and that would fold in. But because you have these side panels, it can't. But of course, you can, of course, bring Baroness in just like that. So she's interacting with the figure at the same time. That's really cool. I mean, you can do some classic Megatron poses. I mean, it is here as what you would want. While there's no ankle pivot, the feet are kind of positioned on an angle, so you can, do it that way. And like I said, these skirts can move out of the way to, like, give you some space. And kind of cool that they gave them, like, some hip weapon, hip missiles. So, yeah. This is a good Megatron figure. But if you're, like I said before, if you're expecting something from like Earthrise or Siege, you're not going to get it. This is meant to be a vehicle first, because G.I. Joe was a vehicle line. But it is a functional figure. I think and you know, it works. It just works. Oh, and let me, before I forget, there are blast. There are the millimeter holes to attach blast effects to the lasers here and to the fusion cannon. So what we're going to do now is we will pause and I'll come back with my final thoughts. To actually get this shot, I had to switch to my other tripod, the one I use to record my vlogs, because it can telescope up enough to get this kind of shot. I really like this figure. Going in, I was a little concerned about the purchase, because I had heard, you know, as I had said, I'd heard some bad things, but I've also heard some good things, and I tend to believe the good things. Yes, there are complaints about the hollowness. Yes, there are going to be complaints about this being a shell former, but as I explained, the hollowness is so Megatron can support the weight of the tank pieces. And you have this large section here to be able to have the Baroness or any other figure interact like this. Sure, it would have been nice to be able to have it fold up, but I understand why it doesn't. In terms of being a shell former, I think as we saw, what's attached to Megatron out of the box, and that you have to attach, you know, later on, forms the majority of the HISS tank. And I mean, it is parts folding up. Then again, I know that there's some G.I. Joe fans who are going to be like, you know, get your chocolate out of my peanut butter. But it is what it is. Try not to think of this as, you know, modern toys. Think of this as what we would have gotten had Hasbro done a G.I. Joe and Transformers crossover line in 1986 at the height of both brands' popularity. As of this recording, the only other crossover figure we've had announced is Bumblebee. That's an Awe Striker, and he comes with Stalker. And that's supposed to be coming next month. Who knows? This was actually supposed to be coming closer to the end of this year, beginning of next year, and it got pushed up much sooner. That's a whole other conversation. In terms of what we can expect, I think I'm going to leave that and do a vlog discussing it, because you know, there's a lot of potential there. But as of right now, if you were on the fence about picking up Megatron, I'd say it's worth a purchase. You might also feel a little bit better waiting for a potential sale, because there is, on the 11th and 12th, there's supposed to be some big Amazon Prime sale. And again, this is an Amazon exclusive, so you might be able to get this discounted. But I'm glad that I have it now, and I think you'll be glad to have it in your collection. That's about it for the review. If you like this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing. While I appreciate the views, the likes, comments, and subscriptions help to communicate to YouTube through their algorithms that my channel should be exalted and held upon high. It is still very shocking to me that the majority of my views come from people who are not subscribed. You are missing out. So please, subscribe. It's better for you, better for me. Well, this is your old pal Chuck, for Megatron and the Baroness. We will see you next time.